back to my channel. So today we're going to be discussing the Republic Act number 6552, or what's popularly known as the Maceda Law. Okay, RA number 6552, or the Realty Installment Buyer Protection Act, was enacted into law in 1972 by former Senator Ernesto Maceda. This is precisely why it was named after him. It's popularly known as the Maceda Law. It basically protects buyers who invest in property, real property, specifically, residential properties on an installment basis. So this covers properties that are either condominium, residential condominiums, house and lot, townhouses, anything that's used for residential. But for commercial and industrial, it's not covered by this law. Also, by properties that were purchased by existing tenants. So, the next thing that we need to identify is, are you covered by the Maceda Law? So, how do we find out? How do we find out if you are actually covered by the protection guaranteed by the Maceda Law? So, first is, if you were able to make payments for at least 2 years. Okay, so for 2 years monthly payments to the developer, or whether it's pre-selling or ready for occupancy, as long as you're making payments for at least 2 years, then you fall into one type of the qualified buyer. Another one is if you weren't able to make 2 years worth of payment, you are still eligible for protection under the Maceda Law. So moving on, what is this protection that we're talking about? Okay, so for those who made 2 years worth of payments, you're actually qualified to get at least 50%, okay, as your refund should you decide, to cancel the purchase or to discontinue the investment, cancel the contract. Let's say, for example, you weren't able to continue your payments anymore, especially now that a lot of people are encountering problems with their finances because of this pandemic. Okay, so you may want to avail of that. So 50%, that's the minimum that you can get as a refund based on the payments that you have already made. Okay, in addition to that, if you exceed 5 years worth of monthly payments, aside from the 50% refund that you get as a minimum, for every year thereafter you get another 5%. So for example, you were able to make, let's say, 7 years of monthly payments, and then you decide to cancel the purchase for whatever reason, okay, then you will be able to get 50% plus another 10% because you exceeded 2 years after 5 years worth of payments, since you already paid 7 years. Okay, so that's 50% for the first 5 years, and since you have in excess of 2 years, that's another 5% each, for a total of 60%. But the law provides that the maximum refund that you can get is only up to 90%. Okay, so even if it's a very long-term period, let's say it's for 20 years, the monthly payments, if ever there's a particular installment purchase agreement with the developer or with the owner, the seller, if you have that arrangement, the most that you can get under this law is 90%. So if you can't make the payments anymore for whatever reason, but you don't intend to cancel the purchase yet, you're still trying to find ways to make the payments, is that, for example, right now you don't have the money to pay for this month, for example, but you already paid, let's say, 3 years worth of monthly payments to the developer. Did you know that you're actually entitled for 1 month grace period for every year that you were able to make as your monthly payments? So for example, you were able to pay 3 years worth of monthly amortizations to the developer, and let's say this month of June, for some reason you can't make the payment on time, so you can request from the developer to have a grace period of actually 3 months in total, because you were able to make 3 years worth of payments. Remember, for every year, there's a 1 month grace period without interest. However, please note that this reprieve, or this grace period of 1 month for every year of installment payment, can only be exercised Okay, you can only use this once every 5 years in your payment term. Okay, so let's say for this year you want to use that, okay, 3 months in the same example I cited earlier worth of grace period. Don't expect that you can use the same in the next 5 years. So you'll have to wait for another 5 years worth of monthly payments if your term is that long, okay, before you can avail that grace period again. So earlier, we talked about investors who were able to make at least 2 years worth of payments. But what if you weren't able to make 2 years yet? Let's say you were only paying the developer for 1.5 years or 18 months. What protection do you have? So your protection is a grace period of 60 days before the developer can cancel your purchase. And apart from that, they have to send you a notice and a notice of cancellation that's notarized before they can cancel your purchase or forfeit whatever it is that you already paid. Okay, so at least you're given that 60-day period to come up with the payments, to make the necessary communication with the developer before they can cancel your purchase. Okay, so but my advice to you is not to wait for the 60 days. Okay, if you can negotiate with the developer now, if you're in a bind, do it. So at least you have time to work on, let's say, requesting extension for payment, okay, or restructuring your payment term if they would approve it. So at least you can negotiate with the developer. You have that time. Don't wait for the 60 days to lapse before talking to the developer and trying to negotiate your payment terms or payment restructuring. Okay, because developers wouldn't want to cancel your purchase right away, even if they can sell it for a higher price now, because of the market that we're in. Okay, so it's also in the interest of the developer to keep your existing contract. So try to negotiate with the developer if you can. Another right given by the Maceda Law to buyers is the ability to assign your purchase to a different buyer, to another buyer. So we covered this briefly in our previous video, but this particular law provides you that guarantee that it is your right to transfer your ownership to another buyer even if you haven't fully paid the property, even if you're still on an installment basis. Okay, there might be fees involved with it, as I mentioned in the previous video, like administration fees, okay, transfer fees, taxes, capital gains tax, things like that. You better clear it up with the developer, but at least you're given that right to be able to find another buyer who can continue your purchase if you're in a financial bind. So normally when you're with the developer making the payments on an installment basis, you'll have the contract to sell. Once you find another buyer who is willing to take over your purchase or investment, then you'll have to execute a deed of assignment. That deed of assignment will transfer your ownership to the new buyer, and that new buyer will be the one to continue the payments with the developer. Okay. Another question that I received from some of my friends is, what if you already have a bank loan for the property? So even if it's pre-selling or RFO, you bought it from the developer, okay, but you have the bank loan already, then you're not anymore covered by the Maceda Law. Why? Because the bank actually paid the whole amount to the developer on your behalf. Okay, and now you have the loan with the developer that you pay with interest on a monthly basis. So it's quite confusing because you're still paying on installment, but in the eyes of the developer, you're actually fully paid already. That's why if you purchase pre-selling properties with the bank financing right away, let's say for example, the project will be turned over in 5 years time from now. You made the reservation. Let's say you made the reservation today. After 30 days, you make the down payment. On the 60th day, you get the bank loan. Okay, so you're going to be paying monthly amortizations to the bank, but the bank will be paying the developer in full already. Okay, so you're fully paid in the eyes of the developer. So since you're fully paid, you're no longer protected by Maceda Law. Another right that is provided expressly in the Maceda Law is the ability for you as a buyer, as the investor, to make advance payments without interest. For some of you who are familiar with, bank loans, especially when it comes to mortgage, you know that some banks would charge penalties if you make advance payments. Why? Because they already factored in the interest that they will earn from your loan. You know why the bank gives you the loan? Because they want to earn interest, right? They will be charging you interest. They're willing to pay the developer in full. Okay, they're going to pay the whole amount. Let's say you bought 10 million property, you pay 2 million worth of down payment, 20%, 80% you finance through the bank. The whole 80%, the bank will pay the developer, and then you'll be paying the bank, okay? And then you initially requested for a, let's say, 10-year loan with the bank for your mortgage. Let's say you decided after a year you wanted to fully pay your balance with the bank. Some banks, I'm not saying all, okay, but some banks will have what they call the pre-termination penalties, wherein if you fully pay or make advance payments on your loan ahead of time and not following the term. Let's say your loan is for 10 years and then after a year you decide to fully pay the remainder of the loan. Let's say you were able to make a big deal wherein you have big cash and you wanted to pay it in advance, or let's say you won the lottery, you won, let's say, 15 million pesos and you wanted to pay the balance from the bank right away so as not to pay interest. Some banks will actually charge you penalties for that because the interest that they were supposed to earn over the 10-year period of your loan is not going to be realized anymore. Be sure to check with the loan officer, try to double check what is the fine print, okay, or what is the term and conditions of the mortgage if they will charge you pre-termination fee should you decide to pay in advance. So for the Maceda Law, as long as you haven't mortgaged the property yet and you're paying on installment basis, you actually have the right to pay in advance without having to pay any interest. So if you want to make advance payments, you can do so. In my case, what I would recommend you to do is not to make any advance payments, especially if your payment term doesn't have any interest. Why? Because you can use the excess funds that you have to invest in other properties or other forms of investments that will yield you, another return on investment. Okay? So use the excess cash that you have to leverage on other investments if it's something that you really want to do. So I wouldn't advise my clients to make advance payments when it comes to their installment purchases directly to the developer, because you can use it for other investments that would bring you a better return. My advice to you, if there are any conflict, is to raise this with the developer. There are conflicting stipulations in your contract to sell versus that of the protections guaranteed by the Maceda Law. Then talk to the developer. Ask them how come there's this conflict when it's stated in the law that this right should be afforded to you as an investor, right? And if you do that and then the issue hasn't been resolved yet, despite your communication with the developer, then that's the time you can talk to a lawyer and ask for your legal options, so at least you maximize whatever remedies you can get before you entirely lose your investment, especially if you have financial difficulty and you don't know what to do, right? Better leave it to the expert, to the lawyers. But before going that route, I suggest you talk to the developer first. Try to settle things amicably. Let's use diplomacy. And I think most of the reputable developers would be understanding at this point in time. Okay, so just try to reach out to them and see, what solution you can avail, to protect your investment or to get as much refund as you can. Okay, but if not, then that's the only time you should go to a lawyer, because lawyers could be quite costly. Once they take up your case, you have to pay generally an acceptance fee, you have to pay their billable hours, no? So before you go that route, be sure to exhaust all, diplomatic channels, So guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a lot from this video. We tackled the Maceda Law, and if there's any clarifications, any questions, okay, anything that you want to ask me, just put it in the comments below. Or if you have any video suggestions, please feel free to do it. Comment down below. So guys, if you learned from this video, if you like the content, please press the like button. Also, press subscribe. And don't forget to smash that bell icon for future notifications every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the next video, and let's all grow wealthy together. Goodbye.